Well, I think it is going to help the university, and I think it already is helping the university. It's interesting. A lot of folks, and I used to do TV sports as far as an anchor for ABC up in Palm Beach. That's part of my past, but people don't really get to know anchors that well. For years, they knew Rick Sanchez, but probably very few knew that you played football, that you were a sports fanatic. And both are the cases. Talk to us about your football background a little bit.
You get a lot of arrows thrown at you, and you get a lot of people saying things that are hurtful. Every word you say is dissected. You're on the air every day for 3 hours. I've never been known to be a teleprompter reader, so I ad-lib a lot. I think it's more true, and it's a better way of communicating. So very few people know who you are. No, aside from my wife and my kids and my parents and, some of my really good friends and a lot of folks in South Florida. And it's not just me, by the way. It's part of being a, quasi-celebrity, I guess. Everybody thinks they know you based on whatever they read about you. So you're at the mercy of some guy who wrote an article or wrote a blog, and suddenly, you're a bad guy or something. So that's just the way it is. And, you're supposed to just have thin skin, and sometimes I wish I had thicker skin. That's just the way the game is. As far as who I was as a kid playing ball, I grew up in Hialeah. My dad never wanted me to play American football. That's what we called it back then, American football. He said it was a crazy sport, a brutal sport of 11 guys jumping on one. So he said, if you want to play optimist football, you're going to have to come up with the money. So I would cut the lawns of all the neighbors in 35th Street in Hialeah, and they gave me $5, and I'd cut 7 lawns, and I'd get $35, and that allowed me to pay for the insurance back then.
And the gas, too. The gas was probably about $15 there.
Exactly. So I just developed a love for football. My dad loved boxing, and he loved baseball. So I played baseball, but when I started playing football, I really took to it. And I was kind of fast, I used to run a 4.5 40. So I lettered all 3 years at Hialeah High School, and I set a couple of records. I had an okay season, and I got a partial scholarship, went to Morehead State, and played there only for 1 year because when I was there, I really got my butt kicked. But while I was there, I got a journalism scholarship through CBS News to study journalism. And I just decided, you know what, I'm probably more apt to become a journalist than I am a professional football player. Yeah. So I decided to play to do that. And I've never stopped loving football, and I'm one of those diehard fans. I live and breathe orange and aqua. Same as the University of Miami, and my newest passion is FIU. I think FIU will be the new Cinderella stories, and I love Cinderella stories. There's no better part in my life than when I was a little kid watching a football team called the Miami Dolphins, which was a joke, suddenly turned into one of the greatest teams, arguably, in the history of sports. Okay. There was no greater thrill than watching the University of Miami go from being literally a joke, at least, in the independent division that they used to play in, because they had to play Oklahoma and Notre Dame and Florida, and it's like, oh my God, at the end of the season, they barely had any players and they'd won 2 games, to suddenly becoming a perennial national champion. That's cool. Wouldn't it be neat if we can take something that's a South Florida product and also create that? It'd be good for all of us. It'd be good for the community. It'd be good for the university, and I think it would be a wonderful thing to be a part of. And that's why I think, Tony, you and I are kind of in a pretty cool situation with this.
Absolutely. It's almost like we're allowed to get on the train going about 80 miles an hour and en route to about 220, somewhere in Europe on a bullet train. And really, Pete, obviously, a major part in that, but getting Mario Cristobal, I thought, was the home run of the century. Now, you've been able to spend some time. I spent a little time with Mario, but you talk about a young guy who probably lives and breathes this thing. You can almost, see it coming out of his pores. He's not going to be satisfied unless this team is a 10-win team on a constant basis.
Well, and who does that remind you of? Think of the really great coaches that you and I grew up with, and the rest of us listening to the show grew up with. Think back at Don Shula for a moment, a guy who I, to this day, can call a friend and love. In fact, David and Michael as well. I mean, here was a guy who was raw, he was passionate, he was a taskmaster, he based his coaching on fundamentals, he poured himself, 99.9% of himself into the job. I mean, that's what makes a guy a great coach. And when you spend time with Mario, the intensity that you get from him reminds you of the only guy I remember being like that, which was Coach Shula. When I was a kid and I had a chance to grow up with him, or grow up with his kids in Miami Lakes, which, by the way, for me was the other side of the tracks because I grew up in Hialeah. But still, my first jobs in my life were umpiring in Miami Lakes for, the rich kids. So I made my $12 umpiring baseball and basketball and football games up there, and I got to know Coach Shula, and I got to know Dorothy and David and Michael, and when I look at Mario and I look into his eyes and I listen to him talk, I see that quality that I used to see in Shula. It's an intensity that says I am going forward. I'm not going to be stopped. And it doesn't mean I'm not trying to set the guy up for being the next greatest coach in history, but you just know that he's doing it the right way. And whether they go 7-3 or 12-0 or 11-0 or whatever it is, you can be certain that this guy will have poured his heart into this product because he does it on a daily basis. And, that's something to feel good. And the kids feel that, too. When you talk to the Gators and the TYs and the guys who've been there for a while, you know that passion is something that has a tendency to stick in your guts, and when you feel it from other people, you have a tendency to act that way as well. So it's contagious. And Mario has that passion, that intensity that I think is going to make it makes me convinced he's going to make this team a good, respectable team, possibly even more.
Absolutely. We're talking with Rick Sanchez, the new color analyst for FIU Football, and my new broadcast partner. I couldn't be happier and more excited. I think every FIU play is going to be an exciting one. At least that's the way it's going to come out on the radio. I know that's kind of my modus operandi, and I think it is for Rick too. Now, Rick, going into this role as a color analyst, what do you think is going? You'll probably grow into your style, but is there any color analyst that you've heard that you go, wow, I'd love to take a couple bits and pieces? I know I do on the play-by-play side. For example, when I was growing up, and you and I are kind of the same age, maybe I'm probably about 2-3 years younger, but it's the same era. I couldn't get enough for Kirk Gowdy can do checkers, and I'd be excited about it. Water polo. Dick Enberg, Kirk Gowdy. I mean, all day long. I can Ray Scott way back. Now I'm dating myself a little bit, but
Aldi Rogata.
Oh yeah.
Kirk Gowdy, and who did he have as some of his partners? Oh, the tight end for the Cincinnati Bengals,
Bob Trumpy.
But yeah, boy, I'll tell you, Trumpy. Those are some great names. But I got to tell you, I won't look far to find what, for me, I think is the greatest analyst / color model that I've ever heard. And I feel bad even saying this, but he just passed away recently. I think Jim Mandich is the best example of what a color analyst can be that I have ever heard in my entire life. And the reason is simple. You could tell he worked hard, he was passionate about the game, but he was also not afraid to share his soul, to share who he was in the broadcast booth. That's really important because, they could hire a robot to just sit there and give you quantified information. So many yards, that's the name of the player. It's really about you trusting yourself enough and believing in some of the things that you see and capture with your heart as well as with your head, and share those with people. Because people watch football games emotionally. And I think it's important as we talk about the game and the kids and their effort and everything that's going on, that we allow ourselves to just be a sports fan, having a good time, sharing your soul, sharing your ideas in a fair and passionate way. That's the key. And when I think of Jim Mandich, that's what I hear. I remember a guy who loved it. I remember a guy who screamed. I remember a guy who told jokes. I remember a guy who turned phrases. I remember a guy who made me laugh. I remember a guy who made me emotional. It's that pathos. It's that sense of conflict and controversy, of winning and losing, that some people just have in their gut. And I think if we can come anywhere near doing something as good as that, we will probably be very adept at what we do.
Absolutely, and it will happen. I believe that certainly after they hear their first game against North Texas, there are about, I believe, 5 or 6 TV games that are going to be going on FIU. They've, of course, this is
they signed 6 ESPN contracts. Pete told me about.
That's right.
I thought you had that glued to your forehead. I think he tells everybody every time he. It's usually, "Hi, I'm Pete Garcia. We're going to be on ESPN 6 times this year."
Oh yeah, hey, that's a badge you wear around, and it comes with some dollars, and of course Tuesday games that open the door to national. But what I wanted to share with you is, after the first game, you are going to hear people in this town lower the volume on ESPN and listen to us. I'll guarantee you that's going to happen.
Wouldn't that be nice? Yeah, that would be great. And we're guys who know South Florida. A guy like Georgie Sedano, who's very close with my family. Wonderful guy, part of our program as well, who's going to be helping us out. In fact, maybe we'll figure out a way to get me down on the sidelines, because that we'll be kind of transferring positions here from time to time. Look, it's about having a good time.
Absolutely.
It's about helping the university. It's about helping people get excited about something in a pretty crappy economy that we're all going through right now. And if we just do that, we will have done our jobs.
That's right.
This ain't brain surgery,
No. It's entertain and inform, and after a 4-hour roller coaster, people are going to be excited about hearing FIU football. And Rick, it's we're running out of time, but what a pleasure it is to have you on this business spotlight on 880 and 1080. And a privilege, my brother, to be able to be sharing the booth with you this year. It really is going to be great, and I look forward to it more than you can imagine.
That's great, Tony. I appreciate it, man. I really enjoyed talking to you, and I think we're going to have a lot of fun. FIU, what a wonderful story this is going to turn out to be, and we're going to all make it happen. And it's ours. It's our story.
You're exactly
thanks
right.
Thanks for having me on, and now I got to go cut the lawn.
Take care, Rick, and thank you very much. Talk to you soon. Well, what a great interview with FIU's new color man, Rick Sanchez, and also my new broadcast partner. It's going to be a great year for FIU football in 2011. Well, this has been Business Spotlight on 1080 WHIM, The Answer, and 880 AM The Biz. Tony Calatayud saying goodbye, everybody.